What's going on, folks? So I've had a few people ask me about my Pox deck that appeared on 90s MTG the other day, where I was playing against my buddy Roland, who was on Grixis Delver. So I figured I'd take this time, just go over my deck list real quick, and kind of walk you through what was going through my mind during the game. For those of you who don't know, I am a longtime Pox player. I started playing Magic in '94, and while I started off with mono-white decks, mono-black quickly became a favorite. For those of you who remember the card Necropotence, it was a hell of a time. So what we have here today is a Pox deck that I've been running. The goal of a Pox deck really is to just reduce the amount of resources that both players have using the card Smallpox. Smallpox causes each player to lose a life, discard a card, sacrifice a creature, sacrifice a land, in that order. That will come up a little bit later. But the idea is that in a Pox deck, you want to trade your resources one for one. And when we get this game to a low level of resources, we're much better able to function in that environment that our opponent is. At least we hope we are. That's the idea of the deck. So you can see that that my deck here, we're running 24 lands plus 4 Dark Rituals. In Pox, if you're playing 4 small Pox, you almost always want to run at the very minimum 24 lands. Normally I run 25 or 26. Taking out Dark Ritual is often needed during sideboarding, and so you still want to have a large number of lands because you have to hit your land drops if when we're casting Smallpox or we're casting him to Torak, we really need to keep applying the pressure. If you cast him to Torak or Smallpox and you just don't do anything afterwards because you land screwed yourself, your opponent's gonna have a time to tempo out of it. So what we're looking for is we're just looking for cards that trade one for one really well, and the few cards we have that give us card advantage, we really want to leverage those. So we're running 4 Thoughtseize. Best discard spell you can have. I've seen other lists that run Inquisition, sometimes Duress, maybe Cabal Therapy. The thing is, like you like Thoughtseize, you have to hit with your discard spell. Like there's nothing worse than like you Inquisition your blue-white control opponent. They're sitting with a Jace the Mind Sculptor in hand, and they don't really have to do anything. They just, if they can hit 4 land drops and drop Jace, you're in trouble. So Thoughtseize, because we really need to. If we need to take card, we really need to take the card. Innocent Blood, because, well, 1 mana, whatever creature you have, whether it is a Goblin token or an Emrakul, Innocent Blood takes care of it. The drawback with Innocent Blood is that both players sacrifice a creature. However, we don't run creatures, so it's not really a drawback for us. Something a little cheeky here. I run 3 Surgicals in the main for this tournament, and one reason was because I knew Force of Fill would be there, and it's a very tough matchup for me, and I really wanted to Surgical his Tundras, and I was able to, and yeah, so that they were there for him. Sorry, Phil, but also with a deck that's causing people to sacrifice and to discard, a lot of decks use their graveyard, so having a main deck way to snipe something out of a graveyard, especially on turn 0, Reanimator game 1 can just go off on you, and they're usually not playing around Surgical. Sinkhole, probably the weakest card in the deck. It's a pet card of mine. I love it. It's why it's there. It just one of the things with Pox is that it has a very, very good matchup against the Delver decks. And while Delver decks are good against everything in the field, their one weakness, whether they know or not, is Pox. And the idea is that what they're trying to make up for in card selection, we're making up with just cards. So while they're sitting there trying to ponder and brainstorm and get the cards that they need, you are just attacking their resource. Like you want to take your turn 2 to ponder and brainstorm. All right, well if I come out Sinkhole Wasteland, you're back to 0. So, I really like Sinkhole. We run the 4 Wastelands as well. Then we have our Planeswalkers, and this is really where we're breaking the symmetry with Pox. Pox does not affect Planeswalkers. So ideally, turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 him, turn 3 Liliana, turn 4 small pox, I mean, just it's very, very difficult for any deck to come back from that. And that's kind of the advantage that Pox has, is that a lot of times you can, doesn't really matter what the opponent's doing. Like, unless you're beating us on turn one, if you're going to try and slug it out with us, that's where we want to be. All right, 2 snuff out. I've had snuff outs for a while, and just recently they started picking up again. I used to run Dismember a long time ago. But being able to play free spells are really where it's at Legacy right now. And my one of Nether Void, another pet card of mine. This is the lock piece. If you can just attack their resources and land a Nether Void, I mean, you're playing Nether Void at 4, at 5, you can start sinkholing their lands. Chances are they can't even play a spell. They can't counter it because they have to pay 3. You do have to remember that Nether Void is a triggered ability, so they can Flusterstorm through it. The first spell will be countered because of the 3, but the copies from Storm will get through the Nether Void. It's kind of similar to Chalice of the Void. Moving over to the board, we have 2 Pithing Needles. Answers Planeswalkers, helps against the Depths matchup, which can be difficult for us. 2 Null Rods for the Artifact decks. And then we go with some creature utility for Dalthy Voidwalkers for Graveyard Hate, and then Plague Engineers for the small creatures. One of the things that can be really troublesome with box decks is if they start to go wide on you, because we run mostly Edict effects. 1/1 tokens, eating an Edict effect is very beneficial for the opponent. So the Plague Engineer kind of wipes those up. And then just a last one is the Abyss, where often if against Vile decks or decks that run Cavern Souls, the other voice generally pretty terrible. So we'll bring in the Abyss to try and help keep things clean. Big part of the deck, Wind Conditioner, Mishra's Factories. Believe it or not, even though it's a mono-black deck, the mana base is actually pretty terrible. We have 8 colorless lands. We leverage pretty heavily on our Borg, which can sometimes bite us in the butt. And there was one game I was playing against Doomsdays where I had to leverage my Borg so I can cast my spells, and ended up allowing them to cast Doomsday. But yeah, that's it for the deck tech. So we're going to head over to the match, and I'll walk you guys through it. And here we go. We're underway. Playing against my good buddy Roland. He's on Grixis Delver. Fortunately, I'm on the play. Take a multi 5. Not exactly where you want to be, but it's the way it goes sometimes. I Swamp Pass. He goes Scalding Tarn Pass. Now, if you're playing against Pox and they go Swamp Pass, and now especially here Swamp Pass, I mean it is almost certain that I'm holding a Smallpox. If you play the creature, I'm not sure if I ran the Smallpox into it. Probably wait one more turn just to play around Daze. You really want to make sure you don't get hit by Daze against the Delver deck. The key is just trading 1-for-1. Don't let their soft permission counter your spells, because that's a 1-for-1 trade. You want them to force a will. You want them to force a negation, because we're taking a because we're getting a 2-for-1. Also, a reason why Dark Ritual kind of goes back and forth in the matchup, because it's terrible to Dark Ritual to a spell and have it get forced, because now it's a 2-for-2. Or get it dazed, which is like literally the worst. So Roland's casting a sorry ads. Ryan Reynolds has enough money; he doesn't need ads in my space. So Roland's taking the pawn. Now, the strength of the Grixis Delver deck, or any Delver deck in general, is they're trying to make up in card selection what I'm making up for in just card advantage. Basically, this match goes to whoever can get ahead first. It's very difficult for both decks to come from behind against each other. So really, like, Roland going into Brainstorm, into Ponder, like... he's probably pulling up some counter spells. I know my next spell is going to get countered. So we play Castle Lockthwain here. And now I'm going to him with Daze backup. And now this is this was a play. It was a really difficult decision for Roland. He decides to double Daze here. The thing is, you're still going down 2 cards, and you're losing 2 rounds of tempo. I'm now 3 lands ahead of him, and if he had something that he was able to drop that I can't answer here, that would probably be the correct line. but I find it, it's really difficult to double days and then come into, land creature go versus the smallpox deck. All right, so he takes the time to waste my Castle Lochthwain, which once again isn't great because now I'm still up 2 lands. It's kind of like waste landing on the draw. It's not always the best idea. I missed my land drop, so he is able to kind of get back here. But now here we go. Land creature. I'm almost certainly holding a smallpox. Looks like Roland dropped a card. There's no funny business here, folks. Don't worry. We're all friends. There's no reason for anyone to be deceitful. Okay, so he passes it to me. I do rip a land here. See, I'm holding a sinkhole in hand. The thing with with Delver decks is a lot of times they only run 6 actual lands. So between Smallpox, Sinkhole, and Wastelands, it's very real threat that you could just completely run them out of mana-producing lands. I run a Liliana of the Last Hope here out into a daze, but here I use 2 dazes. So I wasn't. I felt like the odds were good. I was going to be able to push this through. If he Force of Wills it, it's tough. But then he's down. He would have been down to, I think, 2 cards in hand. Remember, I'm already down 3 cards. I lost 2 on the mulligan, plus he was on the draw. So yeah. So now here we go into, Delver, go. Now he has a land open. I'm a little suspicious because I have an active Liliana, and you're running the Delver into certain death. I'm going to uptick and kill it. So I'm kind of deciding what I want to do. Luckily, I ping it first. To which he stifles the trigger. I mean, stifle's pretty dead against me. It's really only going to hit the Liliana triggers. Kind of just gets disgusting at this point. So I'm going to Smallpox. He only has 3 cards in hand. If I catch a Force of Will on this, discard another Void. And then I'm going to waste his land. And active Planeswalker, Mishra's Factory. Yeah, that's all she wrote. So even on the multi-5, but because I was able to avoid the soft permission and make all of my cards count, where he either had to Force of Will him or I got to trade one-on-one. All right, so he comes into a Volcanic TRC, and I'm going to Thoughtseize. Sorry, T-Mobile. I already give you my money. Why are you advertising to me? Like, literally, you already have my money. Thoughtseize here. Okay, so Force, Murktide, 2 lands. Generally don't want to take the Forces because I want him to force my spells. I want to trade 2 for 1. The only real danger is not even danger yet is the Murktides. You can see my hand stacked 2 Smallpoxes. As long as I have the lands to cast them, it's gonna be a really tough time for Roland. Played out my basic to play against Force Will. You always want to play your basic first, so you don't want to get knocked off a land. So we're gonna play an Urborg. We're gonna try a Smallpox, knowing he has Force Will, Force and Negation. I'm trying to get him to use the Force of Will. I know I sided creatures in, so he might think that Negation might be better and want to hold it for something that he really wants to exile. Once again, we don't share deck lists, so he doesn't know if I'm running anything with either Flashback. And it gets run into a daze, which is unfortunate. I was hoping to run into a Force of Will. He drew the daze off the top. DRC, once again, helps with the selection. DRC is such a good card. But him able to daze that was really big. One thing of note in both these matches, Roland wasn't able to play Orcish Bowmasters, which is really good against Pox. Anything that generates 2 cards is good. The fact it could be flashed in to hit a Liliana that ticked down, I mean, it's just such good utility. The times I've played against it, it's been very, very annoying. We did miss a fetch there, fetch damage. Now, Roland's in the bind because he wants to be able to hardcast the Force of Negation instead, where normally he'd probably waste me off the Urborg. And now this is really going to bite him because I'm going to make my land drop, and now Thoughtseize him. So now, like, him tapping out to force a negation to Thoughtseize. If I follow this up with a him or a smallpox, it's going to be bad news. Yeah, so he forced negations, Thoughtseize. I should have exiled it. I just put it in my graveyard. I don't have any cards that pull anything out of my graveyards. Didn't make a huge difference, but I should learn to play better. Okay, and then we come with a smallpox. So if he has forcible blue card, he can counter it. But yeah. Now this is where the order comes into play. We lose life save time. We discard same time. Creatures I would choose first, and then lands I would choose first. It makes a difference because I end up keeping. I think I end up keeping the Urborg. It makes Roland change what he wants to do. He takes his wasteland. I think, yeah, I do this. And then he asks, what's the order? And then he still has an opportunity. He can put the wasteland back if he wants, because I'm the active player, so I have to go first. So he's going to lose the Underground Sea because he has black mana from the Urborg. But he's going to end up wasting my my Urborg to put me on 1 land. So here's all right. So now this is where Pox wants to be, right? He's going to waste my Urborg. Okay, now we both have 1 land, 2 lands. I have 2 cards in hand, right? So now who can draw out of this first? This is what it comes down to. And we do a little pass go here for a little while. If he's able to land a threat there and then have something to back it up, I'm probably not going to be able to win. Because now he's applying pressure. He's going to be using his cards to dig for whatever he needs, whether it's a land, another creature, and decks that don't play Brainstorm, you're kind of live by the deck, die by the deck, the top deck, So someone says, is it okay to play with mismatched Mishra's Factories if they're all from Antiquities? They are a set called the 4 Seasons. They're not mismatched, you peasant. Just like my Hymn-to-Thorax aren't mismatched. They're from a set. I passed up a Mox Emerald for $10 in 95 to buy Fallen Empire packs so I can get my set of Hymn-to-Thorax. Yeah. So Roland fetches, grabs a Underground Sea. Now you see his graveyard's getting quite lively. Murktide region is a beating, but at the same time, if it's only a Murktide region, I'm fine with that. I literally have 14 cards in my deck that kill it, so it's not the end of the world for me. But if he's able to get a Murktide with like a Delver or DRC Insulation, that could be really difficult. I only really have Snuff Out to deal with that, and I got to take 4 to cast that anyway. So just some draw go here. Now whoever's going to be able to lay a board presence. All right, so there's the Delver. Okay, I choose to end of turn Snuff Out because I don't want Force of Negation, because it has to be my turn for him to Force of Negation. So by doing it at end of turn, I'm able to play around Daze and Force of Negation. If I had to wait to my turn, he would have been able to force it. Okay, there's Dolphy Voidwalker. tend to be good against Delver if you can get them in early. Gets hit by a Daze, yeah, that's tough. And also, it looks like Roland's left in Lightning Bolts, which sometimes people tend to side out. Only because I run no creatures, and they only really hit Mistress Factories, and most of the time, I'm not going to animate a factory to face a Lightning Bolt unless I'm willing to make that trade. So there are times what will happen, but it's only if I know. I think I do that later on where I run a Mistress Factory into a Bolt, but it's knowing because I had a Plague Engineer in hand, and I wanted the factory to eat the Bolt rather than the Engineer. Thinking on the brainstorm. Now this, you know, we've heard the term perfect brainstorm. We cast your brainstorm, put 2 cards back, crack a fetch, and it casts another brainstorm. You know, main phasing a brainstorm usually means you're looking for something to do this turn. Roland plays Underground Sea and passes, so he knows what those 2 cards are on the top of his library. But he also knows he can't just he can't sit here and durdle. He has to start getting action. So here I come. The Plague Engineer. You know, I'm going to name Human. That knocks Delver out of the game while it's on the board. The DRCs are going to be Delirious, so they're going to be 2/2s. Yeah, so he casts a Brainstorm at end of turn, knowing what those top 2 cards are, just to see the 3rd card underneath it. There's a perfect Brainstorm, and then there's the not so perfect Brainstorm. And that's that there. Okay, now he has to draw one of those cards, so really it's like you double Chithering Rats yourself, you know? Some people ask why I wasn't playing Chains of Mephistopheles or Tabernacle. I own 3 chains. I was running Bridges in the board over chains this week. Yeah, the Thoughtseize there grabs the Liliana. If I would have came down next turn, it would have been very, very difficult for Roland to come out. So he wastes the waste, obviously, because I have 2 basic lands. Other than that, Thoughtseize and Thoughtseize. And so as a Pox deck, discard is rather bad against me. I mean, the discard was important there. He hits the Liliana, which would have really changed the tide of the game. But with trading cards 1 for 1, you spent the mana for it. I didn't. I'm trying to do that exact same to you with my mana. So like you're kind of doing me a favor, you know. So Hymn to Torak here hits a Delver and a Force of Will. The Delver is dead, obviously, but hitting the Force of Will is nice. Knowing that my next spell is going to resolve, because Force of Will, Force of Negation are both dead, with only 1 card in your hand and 2 lands. He could rip a Daze, but I think there's one Dazu so far. Yeah, but so there he is. He's digging. Look how many cantrips he's cast. 2 Brainstorms, 3 Brainstorms, 2 Ponders. You know, whereas my cards, Hymn to Torak, Sinkhole, Wasteland, Liliana, like everything is an impact. And this little Plague Engineer is going to go the distance. You know, he's already used 2 Lightning Bolts. He's 2 bolts left to answer it. A Murktide can possibly stop it, but I still have an Innocent Blood in hand. You know, draw Liliana, but I don't have the 3rd land. Yeah, that's what makes Mistress Factory so important in the Pox deck, is because you're reducing resources on both ends. You have to get as much out of your land base as possible. You know, if you've ever played old school Magic, Mistress Factory is one of the best cards in the game from that time. Well, it's definitely perfectly. It can block as a 3/3. It attacks. They can pump each other. If you didn't know, you can destroy a Phantasmal Image with them. If you ever play against Merfolk, you can animate the. You can tap the factory to target the Phantasmal Image if they've made them into a Mutavault, because Mutavaults are all creatures, and the fact that he can target it with its pump ability. I snuff out the DRC there. And, at this point, I'm just trying to keep him off anything. Liliana of the Veil, he has to counter this. The game is pretty much over. He doesn't. Now it's just, I'm pitching an Innocent Blood, so there's really not much he can do here. Well, I don't know why he left the Stifle in. It's very Narragansett Pox, but when it hits, it's usually good. Stifling a Liliana down tick against the Murktide could definitely change the game. That's it. So Pox tends to beat the decks it beats, and it tends to lose the decks it loses to. What does it lose to? It loses to decks that are a lot faster than it. What do you want to see against Pox? If you see a forest, that's exactly where you want to be. Any type of creature deck, Pox is going to excel. That's it, folks. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Love